Hey, it's Armin with Attract. At Attract Advisors, we offer accounting advisory, tax advisory, as well as financial management services. We're lucky enough to work with very many hardworking, talented entrepreneurs across many different industries. Many of these individuals are world-class in their sphere and have great stories to tell. This is our way of highlighting their accomplishments and their insights, and we hope you enjoy these conversations.
Welcome back, everybody, to our next episode of Kickin Assets. Today, we are joined by Patrick Gremillion, a.k.a. Patty G, the godfather of Baton Rouge podcasting, fellow CPA, father, husband, all things entrepreneurship. So, Patty G, thank you for being here today.
Dude, thank you for having me. What a stellar intro.
I appreciate that.
I mean, like, just the godfather of Baton Rouge podcasting. That's a heavy title.
It really is, but who else?
I don't know.
It's got to be you. How many episodes are you up to now?
Like 310, something like that. 6 years.
6 years.
No, coming up on our 7th year, actually. In September, we'll turn 7.
How do you not run out of qualified guests?
The Baton Rouge community, man. So Louisiana, right. So we're the boot focused. We're focused on the boot and business owners in and around Louisiana. We're located in downtown Baton Rouge. So strategically, a lot more businesses are in Baton Rouge. And if you look at just like who's members of BRAC, as an example, the Baton Rouge Area Chamber of Commerce, right? Or whatever they renamed it to.
Partnership.
You've got, partnership, right. You've got 10 or 1,200, 1,300 people. And if you look at the math, right, you do the math, I can only do 50 in a year. That's all I'm doing. I'm doing one a week and that's it. I can't live long enough to hit every business owner. So I'm not ever going to run out of guests, not to also take into consideration how many new businesses are sprung and created each and every year. So at first, I was going through like an immediate Rolodex of like, who do I call? Who do I know to get on the show? But then we're at the point now where it's inbound. So now we've got people coming and asking to be on the show, and then there's just qualifying questions that they have to fill out, forms they got to go through. So it's a little bit more formalized. But as far as running out, people just keep sending recommendations, and I haven't had a dull one yet.
So from a level of, let's just call it success or notoriety or things of that nature, there are people in Baton Rouge who everybody knows. There's kind of like people who, are maybe a little less known, but just as successful, things of that nature. And so how's it been dealing with potentially getting, reaching out with no acceptance, or getting ghosted, or chasing people who you'd like to have on the call, but I guess getting rejected is a better word?
Yeah, getting the no.
Yeah.
Right? So in business, you get a lot of no's. And we go back to our dating time when we were young, before, you and I were married to our respective spouses, let's be clear, and have our children, right? There was at some point we were dating, so there was a certain level of rejection that was experienced there. I was fortunate enough, married my high school sweetheart, so I didn't have to go through a whole lot of rejection. But in business, I started out with one of my first companies was doing seafood wholesaling. So I was cold calling sales on the East Coast to people I'd never spoken for, trying to sell a product that they didn't know that they necessarily needed. So I got hit with 1,000 no's throughout that operation. So the rejection, I quickly got over. And at a young age, I realized the worst thing that someone can tell me is no. And once you get over that, the sky's the limit. And so hearing the no's is just like, okay, great. It's not your time, or it's not the right story for the show. Whatever, I'll move on to the next person. Mm-hmm. That's the other beauty of having so many businesses, is it's not like I've got a pool of 12 people that if I get 6 no's, I've only got 6 yeses, like I'm freaking out, right? So they either want to come on or they don't at this point for me. I'm trying to grow the Baton Rouge community, so I've either got to sell it for why it's important for them to come on and convert that no to a yes, or they just have some hesitancy to telling their story for whatever reason it may be. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get hit with a no, and you just say, all right, take that on the shoulder, and you keep going.
And it's sales 101, entrepreneurship 101. For the listeners who haven't listened to Patty G before with the Patty G Show, Patty G is as outgoing, at least on camera. I think I've heard you say internally you're actually an introvert, but as outgoing and as out there as any CPA that I've ever met. And I'm sure you get that all the time, right? From your clients or people who, are prospects in your accounting firm's business.
Yeah, so I'm like a group introvert, right? When I get in front of like hundreds of people, I kind of am not, that's not my comfort level, but like half a dozen to a dozen, like, yeah, we can roll and have fun. Mm-hmm. So when talking with the clients, they always love to ask the question, where'd you go to high school? I try to learn a little bit more about you. And like, did you go to Catholic high? I'm like, no, I was homeschooled. And so I hit them with that off the bat, and they're immediately thrown off.
On their heels.
Yeah. They're like, what do you mean you were homeschooled? I'm like, yeah, I'm homeschooled. Like, what's the big question? They're like, you do not seem like you're homeschooled. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what you stereotypical homeschoolers are in your head, but I'm one of them. And so then it becomes, okay, well, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm a CPA. And like, no, you're not. Like, what do you mean you're CPA? Like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm an anomaly. All right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, when we sit down with them though, in the business environment, we start going through their business and everything, they can quickly see, okay, you're very easy to talk to. I can have a conversation with you. And more importantly, I've had some folks recently where they've gone and sat with some other people in town. Then they come and sit with me and they say, well, the other person was talking to me like, why didn't I do X, Y, and Z? And I'm stupid because I didn't do that. You're over here saying, okay, I understand you did X, Y, and Z, but you really should be doing A, B, and C. And here's how we're going to move and make you go down that path so you can have a better future. So it's interesting to see and kind of hear them and them look at you, like, especially at a restaurant. They're like, what do you mean you're a CPA? Like, I did not think you were a CPA. So we have personalities too, okay?
And it's the old adage of really, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And, even with our clients, there is a level of being a young CPA that a lot of people just feel that from an experience perspective, like there's stuff missing. And they're right. I think for me personally, it just becomes a quest for me to surround myself with the right people to ask and the right mentors and the right networks and things of that nature. But I feel like once that code is cracked and then it becomes strictly like a personality, relationship, trust perspective, I feel like that's where we could really get ahead from our competition. And it sounds like it's the same for you.
Yeah, that experience is invaluable, right? You're not... My partner at Patrick Gremillion Advisors is Robert Dagrapont, and he's got almost 40 years in the business. That experience you can't replace overnight. And so having someone like that as a mentor to lean on and say, hey, how did you walk through X, Y, and Z scenario? This may be the first or second time I'm coming up against it. And then asking the questions and trying to get in front of people to just see an array of situations is something that having that outgoing personality and not being scared to ask the question, because again, I know the worst answer is going to be no. And once you ask that question, it opens doors. Okay, come see X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, in a decade, I've gone and gotten 20 years. I mean, whatever the time, it's like you've seen enough that somebody over 20 years just doing their normal daily thing would take them to see it. Mm-hmm. And we just being so active and so engaging with people and clients allows us to just jump a little bit. Mm-hmm. And jump in a way of we're getting involved, we're getting our hands in every different type of transaction. So then when the next time it comes up, you're like, it's no big deal. I've already done this before, And so having that personality helps in that sense to kind of speed up the process of going from I'm a newly licensed CPA to I've seen everything under the sun within this particular area.
Mm-hmm. And you've got all your bases covered, right? You've got the mentor with the incredible reputation and experience coupled with the personality. And I think it's a feeling of enjoyment of learning and of getting better, right? And of improving yourself. And I think clients want that for themselves, and then they want that for people that they work for. So let's dive into the firm a little bit more, right? Kind of talk us through last couple years, getting it up off the ground, your staff, your ideal client profile, stuff like that.
Yeah, so we branched out from the existing firm and created Dagrapont Gremillion Advisors back in 2024. So the first months of billing was December of 24. And we set off with a change of mentality and what a CPA firm is. So both of us being licensed CPAs, we got our firm license and everything, but what we wanted to do was focus more on the business advisory and have that constant interaction with clients all year long, where now we're, at the time of this recording, we're in tax season. And so when you have a tax season in normal practice and normal firms, it is like nobody really breathes or acknowledges they have a life outside of those four walls. And not saying that I guess I am saying there's something wrong with that. I'm going to take the switch there. I was just going to say there's nothing wrong with it, but there is, right? You've got the profession as a whole is focused on seasons, and everyone has a seasonality in their business. But the traditional CPA firm structure is let's get as many clients as we can, file as many tax returns as we can, and that's how we're going to maximize our revenue. We're going to do it in numbers. And quite frankly, I was responsible for probably 225 tax returns alone at the previous firm, and we did 3,000 tax returns, 4,000 tax returns collectively. And that's actually a small number for most bigger firms, especially here locally. They're doing tens of thousands of clients. Your big four, I don't even want to know those numbers. However, each staff member generally will have 100 to 200 tax returns to do, both business and personal. When you think about that and you look at the number of days that are in the tax season, you don't have an adequate amount of time to really learn about your clients. You're getting a P&L and a balance sheet, or you're getting a shoebox of receipts. You're punching numbers into the return, sending it off to the manager for review, moving on to the next person. The manager is sitting there reviewing maybe 6.5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes per return, sometimes maybe an hour or two, depending on the level of complexity. You can't adequately analyze every single thing that's going on in that person's business to really know where some steps are that they're missing. Now, with AI, you can get some other back-end stuff telling you what they're missing, but there's really no value add. It's very transactional. It's very, here's a coffee cup, I want to buy this coffee cup, you're going to sell me the coffee cup, and we're done and we're over. We wanted to change that model and say, we want to sit down with our clients ever so often, monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, quarterly, whatever their desired cadence is, learn about their business, figure out where we can implement some strategies to help them all year long, and then the tax return is just going to get filed. It's no longer the primary focus of the service. It's merely just one little leg of the whole table that we're building with them.
And it's the future of accounting services as far as I'm concerned, because when Attract set out, it was in 2022, and we kind of fell into providing that level of service. I'm not going to say by accident, because there were some client advisory services like these departments inside these firms that were trying to scale this level of delivery. But a lot of times in those departments, it was somebody who wasn't that great at audit. So they were like, let's put them in client advisory services, or wasn't that great at tax. And so let's put them over there. It was almost like an afterthought. And a lot of the times the people who would move into those departments had worked for a firm really their whole life. They were never entrepreneurs themselves. They never felt the crunch of not getting paid on accounts receivable, or for a bank, trying to renegotiate terms unexpectedly and things of that nature. And so for us, kind of with our experience coming, out of public accounting, out of a publicly traded company, out of a private equity-backed company, we felt like we had the tools in place. And that's exactly what you guys have as well. The pedigree of talent at your firm is really unmatched. I look at what you guys have been able to do really since 2024, but it's really the culmination of everything that's happened in the last 40 years.
It's the last 40 years, yeah.
And so ultimately, that there's a lot of value to that. And I do think that with AI, it's going to make tax returns easier to prepare. And at the end of the day, folks could also plug in business plans into ChatGPT or whatever and figure it out. But I had this conversation with a friend of mine who owns an AI company. He says, yeah, but will that business owner be willing to bet their business on something they put into ChatGPT, right? And so for us, what we feel like we're really selling is the trust and relationships. And I think that's the future of accounting. It sounds like you do too.
The timing of the conversation today is interesting, right? So before we got started, you asked me what's on my list for the rest of the day. I actually have a call with the AI CPA later this afternoon to talk about the trustworthiness of the profession and the national campaign that they're about to start undergoing with CPAs and their clients. And I was picked for whatever reason to be one of those folks. And so we're having a conversation this afternoon about that exact thing of the trust that is just placed in us as CPAs and how we have a high threshold for what we have to maintain. Now, whole other topics is the requirements to become a CPA from an education standpoint, a testing standpoint. That's a whole different conversation for another day. But when somebody looks at us as a CPA, they instantly have a certain level of trust that we may get to with AI, but not to the level where they can call me, ask me a random question, and I'm going to have the back end knowledge of all their businesses already there and be able to answer how we can make a strategic decision. Now, AI can get there, right? The level of input that is required to get to that point right now is extremely tedious. So when we have clients come in, and you asked also about what our ideal client is, right? I like to look at, we want to have trees as clients, okay? So we want to have big entrepreneurs that then have all these ancillary businesses as the branches and the leaves. And so we want to stay to a core set of trunks of clients where it's, a dozen to 2 dozen clients. And I'm probably going to be tapped out at that point because I have to be in order to provide the level of service that each of those are going to need. And so when you look at them, they're coming in, they're saying, Patrick, all right, I got 6 different businesses. Here's what all that they do. Here's how they all speak together. Here's how we're running things. Am I doing it right? And so literally yesterday I was going through a reorganization with a client and an attorney on how we need to go about handling certain transactions that have been on the books that we got to clean up, we got to get them off, and all the tax implications of each of those transactions. You were to throw that in a chat GPT and say, I want to buy this owner out, how should I do it? It's going to give you a list of technical steps that you need to do. However, unless you also feed in, I've got these other 6 different businesses that are running this way and that way, it's not going to look at the global picture. So when folks come to me with their trees, they're like, here's me, John the entrepreneur, and here's all my businesses. Help me out. I'm like, great. We're going to make this move, make that move, and make this move, and now your whole picture is going to look like this. And along the way, you're going to need a S election here. You're going to need a partnership return here, a partnership return here. We can then pull distributions from this one to go to that one so you can feed yourself from here. Only take a W-2 here in the S Corp. Partnerships, we're going to figure it out some other way. It's like you have to lay all that out for them, and that's the level that they come to us with, is that CPA advice, that guidance, that business advisory, where we really had the 40 years of cutting our teeth and are really spending the next 40 doing just that.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are, very clear about the size of an entrepreneur's different endeavors and enterprises, right? Like, you're not for everyone.
No,
and so you turn a lot of business away, I'm sure, right? So talk me through that feeling
of turning someone away. So it's an interesting feeling, and it's not this like egotistical turning you away. I just know that every business owner at each level has different needs. A business owner making less than $100,000 has a certain need, right? They've got minimal needs from what I can provide. A business owner making $1 million or less has different needs from what I can provide. When they start getting to 5, 10, 15 and above, then we can start actually looking at how we can help. Those that get to the 100 and billion revenue level, we can really start getting into structuring and setting things up. Because at each level, they have a certain level of, each tier, they have a certain level of tolerance for what makes us keep going: fees, expertise, and risk. You've got a few different items within there that a $100,000 a year business owner is not going to pay to have me sit and devote 100 hours a year to them. It's just not in the budget. You've got somebody at different levels that say, yeah, I'm going to need 20 and 50 hours from you a year, and my company can afford that because I know what you're going to have us do. We can start implementing and start accelerating what we're going to get to. So when they come to me, and I just had a client 2 years ago when we started this say, hey man, can you help me out? Here's my business and everything. And I was like, I can, but you're just not big enough for me. And then what was even a better feeling was he called me a month ago and said, hey man, I'm big enough. He's like, this year we're going to do X. And like, I think now I'm ready. I'm like, that's awesome. Let's sit down. And so now we're sitting down and now we're going through and we're resolving and everything that he needs. But for the folks that are like, hey, I'm this size, I'm like, you can get by either doing it on your own. here's some QBO links that you should probably watch and get it handled. When you get to a certain scale, come back. But in the meantime, anybody can file a tax return. And at your level, it's pretty simple, right? You can probably go to the IRS and the Louisiana website and file it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's not overly complicated because you've got one business and you got you and your spouse or something working in the company. You know, it's not overly complicated. So you just don't need us yet. It's not that we can't sit here and help you. It's just you don't need to incur the cost that we're going to have because your income's not at a level where the decisions we're going to have you do are going to pay for themselves. Like, we can give you a decision to do, but our decision, even if it increases your revenue by 10%, it's going to go from 100 to 110,000 a year, right? And so we're not sitting here saying, make this sale and then you're going to go to the moon. It's how do we figure out your structure of, do you need debt? Do you need to minimize your tax bill?
Yeah, and it becomes like hearing you tell that story and your feelings of dealing with that, because I'll be the first to admit, I want to help everybody. You know,
I do too. It's tough, man. It's tough to tell them no, but each time I have a day similar to what I had like yesterday or really this whole week where I just get back to the house and I'm just like beat from having to be on the phone from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. and just talking to people and figuring out things. And again, we're not dealing with, oh yeah, your W-2, you under withheld, tell your payroll provider to increase your withholdings. Like, we're dealing with, oh, okay, you've got to make a decision to take on 2 or 3 more people and incur X amount of revenue, or are you going to cancel this whole line of business? Like, it is not simple little questions that we're having to answer and deal with. It's complex stuff, and you have to spend your day operating a high level all day long. It gets a little tiring. And so for me to then have to like ride a roller coaster of helping a solopreneur with their $100,000 a year business and then jumping back up to somebody working in, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits, it's just like, it's tough.
Yeah, and I think it comes with maturity too, because I feel like in listening to your feelings about it, it's kind of like going to do a hard workout or sitting in an ice bath. Like, you don't want to tell that person no. You don't want to do that workout. But after you do tell them no, or you do the workout, you feel a lot better after.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think just takes a lot of trust in the process, because in the long run, it's going to be better for everybody, right? And so, starting with that end in mind, I think is a good reminder for me too, right, on the sales side.
Dude, it's looking, and again, we're trying to grow the firm, and you're trying to get to a certain level for yourself personally and for your team here, right? You want to make sure that they can grow and progress in their career, and that's both a financial and a personal element to it. And when you look at the clients you want to bring in and all getting the sales, it's like you get almost a high of the yeses in signing clients, but then you're kind of just stepping back into the same motion of, well, shoot, now I've got 1,000 clients that I've got to deal with that we're touching them at like 6 minutes here, 6 minutes there, 6 minutes here. It's like, are we really providing the value that we set out to do? And so I look at our entire client base, and we're a team of 10 people now. We're at 230 clients. That's including the main pillars and then all their ancillary businesses. So I went from doing 200 to 230 tax returns myself to now as a firm, that's all we're doing. And it's setting our business up so that way I can have somebody spend an entire day on one client and do nothing but that client for the whole day, and it may turn into a week-long project, but it's okay because they're dedicated to a set list of folks, and they don't have to go and touch 300 people in a month.
Right. I think most firms are 100 feet wide and 3 foot deep.
Yeah.
You are 3 foot wide, 100 foot deep.
100%.
Right. And it's probably a nice segue into this conversation, because we were talking a little bit before we jumped on air as it relates to like the current state of accounting in general, but especially even here in Baton Rouge, right? And so one of the stories that we kind of shared here was that there's one firm in town, and there have been many, but one firm in town in particular just sold out. Basically, they don't send the client the bill until after the work is done. So the client's kind of like left guessing for like, dang, I wonder how much this is going to cost. And then they get hit with the bill, and it was almost like 3x of what it was last year, right?
Yeah.
So go from like $2,100 a year to, north of $6,000. And so I'm curious to hear, like, as a CPA who has really seen this transition over the years of big firms getting bought up or bigger firms, and what it does to the client experience, what will happen and what do you see happening right now in that realm, and how does it affect you and me?
So it affects you and I from a opportunity standpoint. You have big firms coming in, and really the back end of what's happening is you have these private equity groups that are coming in and buying up these firms. They're doing it because accounting firms in general can be very profitable machines if run well. So private equity is trying to do that, and they're experimenting with accounting and engineering, and they're starting to dabble in this professional services landscape as a private equity group. So they're buying these firms and they're trying to maximize revenue. They're doing that by increasing fees, maximizing staff, and maximizing clients. But what's also happening is on the back end, these PE firms are trying to tap into that client network. They're trying to tap into those high-earning clients and either sell them financial services from another leg that they already have, or they're trying to get them to invest in different funds and earn their management fees from there. So it's almost just coming like all-consuming when these private equity firms buy in. And throughout that process, they are raising fees, which means you've got clients on the lower end of the pool can't really afford to keep up with it. Because let's be honest, the way that some of these businesses run, they're running on tight budgets for a small business, which we know is the backbone of America, and they are struggling to pay the fees at some point, and so that's why they're delaying it 30, 60 days or getting on payment plans. And then when you have the firm come in and say, great, we're 3Xing your fees for the exact same service year over year, then they're like, well, I've got to go somewhere else. So the opportunity comes in to allowing young, tough, and really eager CPAs either start their own practice and start figuring out where they want to be in that service pool and say, I can start servicing you because my costs are lower. Not that I'm going to be providing a lesser service, I've just got less overhead. Mm-hmm. So what I see is probably going to end up happening is you've got a lot of one-off CPAs starting different practices and servicing in a small select group of clients that's going to pay for themselves, and that's it. Right? So the world of I've got to have 24, 3 partners and we got to have 100 people in this organization is going to start getting less and less frequent because remote work and remote communications has boomed since COVID, which means you have people that are going to be willing to have conversations with their CPA or their financial advisor remotely. Mm-hmm. They also have this access to co-working spaces like we've never seen before. So they can rent this conference room in different places and meet their clients there and then go back and work out of their home office and do all the work that they need to do or go meet them at the library or meet them at a coffee shop. And so folks in a certain bracket and a certain pool are going to be okay with that service. They need that service. And so you can have a dozen CPAs that were at these big organizations that just get fed up with the way that they're trying to run things, leave, have all that knowledge and experience, get 100 clients and work for 6 months out of the year and just do taxes. And that's going to happen more and more and more as these fees go up, where I'm not saying we shouldn't charge what we're worth. By no means am I saying that. Anyone you talk to will attest. I'm not sitting here being a discount firm. Mm-hmm. But when you only have yourself, your overhead is really low. You can afford to not charge what some of the bigger firms are currently charging and make a great living.
And to your point, the barrier to entry is so much lower now than it was before, right? Like you don't need an office where people can bring their stuff and drop it off, right? That happens to me, I'd say, I don't know, if we add 100 clients in a year, maybe like 4 or 5 of them are like, well, can I come in and drop my stuff off and we'll work through it together? And I'm like, no, like I need to work with you not sitting next to me.
Yeah.
You don't need a printer and a scanner and a fax machine anymore. Like you can gain credibility by not having brick and mortar, without a brick and mortar. And that's really something that we're considering as we continue to grow because we've outgrown the space, right? I mean, first we only occupied 2/3 of this building, then we took another third. Now we're up to 22 employees. Not all of them work in this office, but everyone who does, we're maxed out. And so we're looking at what does that mean next for our organization, going virtual and things of that nature. And as I mentioned before, we spend a lot of time, money, and effort on coaching and masterminds. Like one of my coaches right now is Brandon Hall, who's like a thought leader in the space. And, he has this mastermind that I'm also a part of. And I understand that you have also really gone down that route, especially with the AICPA. And so for folks who don't know what that is, it's the American Institute of CPAs. It's the governing body of CPAs that, for the last 100 or more years has been like the organization to maintain CPA credibility and maintain licensing requirements, all those types of things. And so I'm curious if you could go into how you got so involved in that and what has your experience been like as it relates to these cohorts or like other, groups that you're in.
So it started with my time at LSU and realizing that the accounting majors that are graduating were diminishing. So the number of people graduating in accounting was going down. And I was like, this is not okay. Because then you got hit with COVID, where a large chunk of the CPAs that were practicing just retired. They were like, we're done. So now you have all this talent pool get smaller. And so I quickly realized if I'm going to run my own firm one day, I've got to figure out a way to make sure that talent pool remains accessible and remains ever growing. So I got involved with the LCPA, which is our Louisiana chapter of CPAs, and I got involved with the Baton Rouge chapter. So I was approached by a CPA at one of the events saying, hey, I know who you are from the Patty G show. You may not know me, but you should really get involved with the LCPA. And I said, okay, well, tell me a little bit about it. And they told me about how they advocate for CPAs and how they have organizational meetings, how they have events, and their whole goal is to promote the profession and to, again, try to retain and attract talent to become CPAs, right? We've got the law firms and the lawyers. They've got suits and TV shows for days promoting that profession, whether we acknowledge it or not. Mm-hmm. CPAs, we've got 2 movies about accountants, and they're both about killing people. Like, I've done a lot of stuff as a CPA. Evicting people with cops and Marines is one of them. Bringing bags of cash to jets is another. I've yet to have to pull the trigger on somebody. So it's not an accurate depiction of what it is that we do. I think there's like one scene where he solves the fraud issue in the conference room in the first movie that's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, there's not really this story. And somebody sent me this little mini series that's on YouTube that kind of talks about accounting, but like there's nothing mainstream, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody's talking about the profession in the way that they talk about finance majors, they talk about lawyers. Like when you have those movies, you see Wolf of Wall Street, you see Suits, it makes that profession more attractive to the mainstream. And so getting involved with the LCPA, I'm like, I've got to figure out a way. How do we tell people CPAs are cool people too? Like we can do cool stuff too. We do really exciting stuff. And so then being involved with the LCPA organically led to being involved with the AICPA, because now we're talking about the national level. And so I was fortunate enough to go to the AICPA Leadership Academy in Durham 2 years ago and got to meet CPAs from across the country, except Texas. Nobody came from Texas. And really got to hear their story of what they're doing in their part of the country and how they're being involved with the profession, their clients, et cetera. It was very eye-opening for what was happening. And from there, they encouraged us to stay involved with the AICPA. And so just staying involved with, getting on a board or a committee and helping them with whatever it may be. And then now I'm the president-elect of the Baton Rouge chapter for LCPA. The LCPA has now put me in touch with the AICPA for this campaign to try to promote the trustworthiness and the validity of the CPA profession. And again, continuing to push, we do cool things, but more importantly, how necessary we are. Like, I had a conversation on the show a couple weeks ago with a guest talking about veteran affairs and how they're trying to help veterans get out in the community for work, whether it's connecting them straight with employers, connecting them straight with organizations, or helping them start their own business. And I got into accounting to do just that with anybody, right? Help them start their business and help them realize just how important the numbers and the finances are of their organization, no matter the size. I may work with the higher ends now, but being small is still critically important to know your numbers. The smaller you are, the more you really need to know your numbers, because every dollar matters. And so having a profession that our job is to paint a picture of what those numbers are, but then also tell them the story of why those numbers got to where they are, right? Like we're really artists and storytellers when it comes down to it, because we got to paint this picture of your financial structure, and then we have to be able to tell you how those numbers came to be. Why are your COGS 75% when they really should be way lower? Why is your labor 40% and you're in the hospitality industry and you really need to be 30 or less? How do we look at this and make it make business sense for the owners and entrepreneurs and people leading their organizations? That's what we have to do. Mm-hmm. AI is just going to say, your labor was 30% higher than what it was last quarter. And that's it. Like they're just going to give you facts.
Yep.
They're not then going to say, hey, I'm going to come sit at your floor and I'm going to see what's going on. All right, it's Thursday night, 6:00, and you've got a full staff, but your restaurant's not going to get busy till 7:00. Why don't you have 2 or 3 of those people come in an hour later?
Mm-hmm.
What is that going to do? What is that going to do over 52 weeks a year, having somebody start 2 hours later than where they were starting? And it's not just one person, it's 3 people, right?
Right.
So 6 hours, 6 man hours a day you're saving. Multiply that out times however many days you're open. Multiply that out by their rate. Well, that's your savings.
Mm-hmm. And it's being an operational accountant, right?
Yeah.
Like what matters most to business owners is maximizing their time and money. And most CPAs only talk to their clients once a year, if at all, right? For the reasons that you had explained earlier in this call. And so for me, and I think it's the same for you, that what we have from a growth potential and also the limits on our growth is not the clients. Mm-hmm. We can get as many clients as we want or as we need, right? It's about the talent. And I've really dove in recently to trying to get that talent pipeline of people who can come join Attract, able accountants or growth-minded, open-minded, tech-forward. They live by our core values, all those types of things. It's much harder to build that than it is the client base. And so talk about your experience a little bit, because it kind of is tangential to what you're doing at the CPA level.
Yeah.
Like in terms of recruiting and what do you look for in, wins and losses over the last, 2-3 years especially.
Yeah. So when we started in 24, it was myself, Rob, and 2 other people. One of them was an employee of ours, and the other one was a retired CPA who was just trying to keep doing some work. So it was 4 of us. And since 24, we've now grown to 10 people and working to get that 11th here soon. And so what I noticed in the pipeline and going to LSU recruiting fairs, going to their business networking events, and being involved with Beta Alpha Psi from the sponsor level was it's the front end education of college students for them to realize what it is that we do. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to these business networking events, and you got all the players there. You got the big firms, you got those super awesome local firms like Attract just sitting over there, and then you got like me in the corner with like with a family crest on my shirt and wearing a hoodie, and they walk up and they're like, I've never heard of you before. I'm like, you probably haven't. Like, our website just went live like a couple weeks ago, and you probably haven't heard of us. And like, what do you do? And I was like, well, and I described to them what we did and everything, and they just looked at me and they're like, you mean that's a thing? Like, that's a thing that CPAs can do? I was like, absolutely it is. Like, what are you being told right now? What are you learning about in school, and what are they telling you that you can do as a CPA? And they're saying, well, we can go into tax or audit. I'm like, okay, well, there's a whole new world over here that you can come and live in that is not just pigeonholing you into tax and audit. Mm. And I've won an employee from a Big Four because she was tired of that. She was tired of just working on one client's other state taxes all year long. In like one spreadsheet. That's all she did all year long, was just this one thing for one client. And super high level, super complex stuff, but it's just the growth, there's like a cap, right? And you then learn about the Big Four or the bigger firms where you get in and they are very polished, they're very full of, here's what we're gonna do, here's your roadmap to success. But you look at it and you're like, I'm going to spend 5 years as a junior staff before I even have a promotion and working crazy hours. Like, that's just, why do I want to do that to myself? And they're like, well, because when you get to this level, here's the fruit, here's the carrot, you can have all the success you want. It's like, yes, 20, 30 years down the line. I'm like, why don't you come and work for us? And like, you'll start growing professionally day one. And then the follow-up question is, okay, great. What do I need to do? What do you look for in your talent? I'm like, problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
If you can solve problems on your own and you know how to solve problems, you're golden.
No doubt.
Because I can teach you everything else.
No doubt.
I can teach you what you need to know. You can learn, you can read, you can investigate and figure things out. But if you can't solve a problem, there's no value there for you.
And don't you think that we're kind of in this golden age of like accounting transformation where you're coming off COVID with folks wanting and being open to meeting virtually? You've got this AI boom that is not going to replace accountants, but what I like to say, and it's not my term, but that accountants will be replaced by other accountants who are using AI, and at least to some degree. And then you've got this issue where the CPA is an aging industry because for years they never built that pipeline to make it sexy to come in and work. And you got the fact that accountants are in general not very outgoing from a growth perspective or from a talent perspective or even from like a risk-taking perspective. And look, I'm not very risky. I would say though, compared to some CPAs, maybe I am because I want to teach about real estate investing or ways to improve your business and kind of step out a little bit to say, well, why don't you try this? I think a lot of CPAs historically either didn't know how to coach that or they didn't want to be wrong. And I think that when that advice is given, if you've got data to back it up, I mean, at the end of the day, that's entrepreneurship 101. Every entrepreneur took a risk at some point, a considerable one. And having a CPA who understands that is critical. And that's obviously, in my mind, like the biggest feather in you and your partner's cap is the track record of making forecasts and being proven right? And that trust that comes along with that.
Yeah.
And so as we kind of think about like, your view as an entrepreneur, is it as difficult as you thought it would be from starting a firm from, over the last 2-3 years?
No. Meaning I knew what I was getting into. Mm-hmm. Not that it's not tough or that it's challenging and that it's super easy to do it. But I knew going in the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of effort it was going to take, but I was willing to do it, right? So when you look at accounting right now, for the most part, it's tracked by billable time. And I quickly, when we switched it over, I just stopped tracking non-billable time because I didn't want to know how many hours I was working that's not billable. I couldn't handle that. Like knowing if I'm working, 3,000 billable hours in a year, and then I've also got 1,000 non-billable. I just couldn't fathom and equating every single hour of my day to what I was doing. And so I just quickly stopped looking at that, but I knew it was going to take every minute that I had available to work and grow in the business. And quite frankly, it was a family discussion. Like my wife was heavily involved in these conversations. She is less of a risk taker than probably you are and way less than I am. And she was just like so nervous about it because she knew we had great success. And when she knew we had a great thing and an idea and a concept that was going to work, but it was still the unknown of, okay, well now it's on you. Like there's no longer a question of, well, if the firm doesn't succeed, the owners have to pay out your paychecks. Like, no, Patrick, you are that now.
Yeah.
Like you are responsible for not only your income, but also for every team member that you have a part of the organization. You're responsible for their livelihood. And so that amount of weight falling on the shoulders was just, I was ready for it, number one, because I grew up in an entrepreneurial household and I knew what it took. I saw my parents build and grow and also overcome challenges along the way. And I knew the amount of work and effort that it took to get there. So I was ready for it. But man, when you get in it, it's different than what you can ever imagine, right?
Yeah.
You can plan and what's the saying? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of how you take that punch and absorb it and go back into the field and how, it's not about how hard you get hit and keep going, how much you can take and keep moving forward. It's the same thing with owning a business, right? You're going to have days where that AR is going to go over 60, 90 days, 120, and you're freaking out because you see your balance and your cash start going down and it's not going back up because nobody's paying you. And it's like, well, what's happening here? Oh, I've got to make those calls. I've got to call the AR. I've got to call the folks that owe me money and tell them they got to pay me. Like, that's my job now. Like, you've got a wonderful staff and a wonderful team here, and you've got great admins. We don't have a whole lot of admins. And that is the difference between us and some other folks is we don't, like if I were to show you our non-billable hour report, just over 10 people, you'd probably freak out because we're not focused on that part because as the partners, we take that on. We take on that administrative burden. So if a team member comes to me and like, hey, I need sticky notes or something. Like it's just, you get down to the details. I'm like, yeah, I got to order sticky notes today. Like, okay, I'm on it, you know, because we're trying to minimize the cost that we have to make sure that we can spend all of our time focusing on the clients.
Yes. Yeah. And they're trusting you to get it done. And when the stakes are so high, when your fees are so high, you have to be the one to either do it or make sure it gets done. Like it's just business in general. The further that the deliverer of a service gets from an owner, in my mind, I mean, you can process it out all you want, but that person who's 5 levels down is not going to care as much as the owner.
No.
But your clients are looking for that level of owner care, right? Owner to owner. And so I think that is a huge part of what makes you guys unique and then obviously so valuable. And that quote that you just noted, it's from the movie Rocky Balboa. I had that written when I was a teenager. I wrote it on a piece of paper and taped it to my wall. And so it's very poetic that it's coming back to this because I was thinking about this, you know, really like shower thought that there is no secret to success. It's really your tolerance for adversity, right? Getting hit and keeping going. You know, your eagerness to learn, right? To get better and then it's your ego, really, like knowing that there's a lot out there that you don't know and that, you know, it's okay to not know the answer, to say, I don't know, because someone like you or me is going to go in and find out that answer. And so you are a serial entrepreneur now, right? You have other businesses beyond the firm. So let's talk about those a little bit.
So collectively, I got 3 other businesses beyond the firm. One of them is a plain Jane real estate entity that's holding some rental property. And then I've got another one that is the Patty G Show. That's the podcast. It's operational and paying its own bills finally. And then I've got another one that's a media production company called PB&J Productions. And so I've got them all housed now downtown, which is nice. But, you know, the Patty G Show is 7 years old. Media production company's coming up on 2 years old. And they've kind of just been organic businesses that have been made based on the needs of me, right? So having my show, I was paying for producers, I was paying for talent to come in and record everything for me. And then as I'm doing the show, people are like, man, this is awesome. How do I get involved here? And I said, well, you know, you just need to do X, Y, and Z and get your own show and everything. And they're like, well, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, I can help you. And then I found out I was just giving away too much time of myself helping the people get their boots off the ground and get their own stuff started. And I was like, why don't I just figure out a way to monetize this? And so I brought in a producer to help me with my show. I said, hey, let's become a partnership. Let's make this own production company. I've got a funnel of people that come on the show that need services, and you just provide it for them. And so we'll just handle it that way. And so that's kind of spun off PB&J Productions, where now it's what we're doing. We're doing video content, audio content, you name it. And so it's still very services heavy. I haven't figured out the product side of business yet, right? Like I'm not selling ebooks or anything. So maybe one day I'll find out how to do something that's not involving time. But those are the slate of businesses. And then you got Patrick Gremillion Advisors, which is the main energy absorber for now.
For sure. And it's really the same thing that we opened up this conversation with from a private equity perspective, because you're getting someone in the ecosystem and then servicing them in multiple ways. I think what you've been able to build with the show and the network of the show and the annual events that you put on and like the get-togethers and the connections that you're able to make. You know, you learn on the show that somebody has an issue and, you know, the show ends and you're connecting with someone who could solve that issue. Like you just are are already and continuing to grow as like this massive connector at like such a young age, right? I mean, we talked off air, like not to age you, but you're 29 years old. Like that's really impressive.
Yeah.
And so where do you see it going from here? Because you've achieved a crazy, like what I think is a very respectable level of success, not only like just counting like monetary or what business success, but like, you've got a great wife who I've met. I know you've got 3 children. You've got this amazing reputation and a lot of friends. And so is it more of the same? Are you trying to get less involved in day-to-day in any of your entities, more involved on, I know Baton Rouge is something you're very passionate about. And so any nonprofit endeavors or campaigns that are going to grow that, like what's next?
That's a great question. I don't often get the opportunity to give a lot of thought on what's next, right? Because it's still so much into the trenches and the weeds of the now. But for me, there's a cap to the size of the organization that I want to get to, right? I don't want to get above a certain number of employees because then we lose why we started it.
Yeah.
And so I think we're not there yet, but when we hit that cap of servicing clients, then to me it's okay, how do we maximize relationships and how do I then start going and investing with them and figuring out how we can grow together, different businesses, different organizations when that time comes. And then also figuring out a way to continue to grow the community. Right now it's a connector, right? I'm trying to figure out, okay, A has a problem. I know B can solve it. Let me put them together and see what they can create. And maybe that's all it will be. Maybe I'm just connecting people for the betterment of themselves and for the betterment of the community and let them handle it, right? Because I can't be everything to everyone, but I can be one thing to a lot of people. And if I'm just saying, hey, you need to go talk to John or you need to go talk to this person and they can take care of what you've got going on, I'm still good with that because for me, it's never about how I can elevate myself to the next level. It's how can I stay in the background and push the community as a whole forward and make them all realize together, collectively, everyone can accomplish the overall goal that we're trying to do, which is grow and better and improve the state of Louisiana. And it's just happening in Baton Rouge because it's where I am. But I can't be everywhere. At some point, love to have more family time, right? Would love to spend more time with the kids and the wife and everything. So it's like that element's there too. How do I then start to maximize the time out of the office? How do I find that balance? Is there a balance? I don't know. But it's something that for me is important as family, right? I wouldn't have gotten involved with my wife and had 3 kids if I didn't value family and what that is like, whether it's after work, before work, or on the weekends. And so for me, it's how do I get more of that in the future? And then how do I also build a culture, build an organization where I want the same for my employees, for my team members, right? Like I was talking earlier about how we won the person over from a Big Four. Not only were we giving her the opportunity to grow professionally and grow within an organization, but also gave her 10 hours of her life back a week just from a commute. Just from her having to drive to downtown Dallas and back was 10 hours of commuting every single week. And so being able to tell her, I'll give you 10 hours back with your husband. And when the time comes, your children every single week if you come work for us. And having those conversations is valuable to me. How do I have team members where if they need to go to X, Y, and Z and it's the week of tax season, me stepping up and being able to handle it, right? Like I've got 3 people that are out next week, which arguably is one of the busier weeks for business tax season. And I've got stuff in place to allow them to do that, where I've got to be able to operate with what I'm trying to convince everybody else of. How do I try to tell people you shouldn't be focusing on making sure during tax season everyone's working Saturdays and Sundays and working till all ends of the day just to get tax returns done. I've got to figure out a way to implement that in my own firm. And so we've done that. And now it's how do I start having the profession realize that it's doable? How do I start having the profession realize that what we can do is achievable, and you stop having the days where it's a Saturday? Baton Rouge St. Patty's Day is a big thing, right? How is it that we get to a point where instead of driving by CPA firms on St. Patty's Day and watching the parking lots be full of cars, you see them at the parade with their families? Like, how do we get there? That's what I'm pushing towards from the profession, is we can do it all. There's a lot of stuff we got to solve, but it's possible.
Yes. This is so good. So as we wrap up here, my last question, I didn't prep you for this.
Okay.
But it's something that, I could just feel the energy and the eagerness and just the yearning to like do your absolute best. Like, where does that come from?
My parents, to be honest with you. Growing up, I have what's called Peter's anomaly, which is a gene defect that impacts the nerve in your brain to your eye. So basically, I'm blind in my left eye. And so my parents, when I was growing up, always told me that I could do whatever I wanted to, right? Because my mom didn't want to like have me just engaged in this limiter of like, oh yeah, you can't see out of your left eye. Like you've got to figure out like how do we help combat that? She was just like, no, just go and explore and just try to be a kid and figure things out on your own. And we're not really, we talked about it and we have to figure out if we can cure it or whatnot, but it was never a limiter. And so from them at a young age telling me anything was possible, and then my parents living a life that showed me anything was possible, it was just ingrained in me. And, I give a lot of credit to my dad when I turned 16. So I'm the fourth of 5 kids. So I got 3 older siblings and a younger sibling. And I got to see all of them get cars and everything when they turned 16. And my dad was like, I was like, hey, Dad, I'm 16. Do I get a car or whatnot? He's like, yeah, there's a company truck out in the back. It's a 98 Chevy 2500 single cab with a pipe rack on it and a utility bed on the back. He's like, if you fix it, it's yours. It doesn't run right now, but you fix it, it's yours. And so him having me go through that motion, realized I could get what I wanted so long as I worked and put the effort forth. And so if you scroll down through my Instagram far enough, you'll find a picture way back when I got the inspection sticker because I passed inspection with the truck. And I was like, this is awesome that I was able to do this. This is just great. And so from there, it was like, okay, if I set my mind to it, I can figure it out and problem solve and work my way through it. It's not that I'm sitting here today accomplishing what I've accomplished because I'm some brainiac genius, right? Do I know some stuff? Yeah. But am I always the smartest person in the room? No. I know the smartest person in the room. Don't get me wrong. But I've figured out that if we just work hard and we do whatever we can to problem solve and educate ourselves and keep improving ourselves, there's no limit to what you can get done and what you can accomplish.
It's so good. Well, it's been such an honor having you on again. I guess the roles are reversed from a podcast perspective, and so thank you for being in the hot seat.
Yeah, thank you, man, for having me.
And thank you for giving us your outlook and what drives you, and all things about improvement and getting better and changing the game. Right? We're gonna look back on this in 5 years and be like, man, look at those 2 guys. Like,
those 2 young kids,
CPAs who can actually have a conversation and like, where do we, I can't wait to see what happens in the next 5 years. So thank you again for being here, Patty G. I look forward to continuing our friendship and our working business relationships and, just overall improving each other, the profession, the city, all that.
Heck yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.